Concerning the opening ceremony at the Paris Olympics, is it really that bad what was done? Is it really that bad when we think about where the scene of the Last Supper comes from? I want to place that into context and I want to place this question into suspense. Is it really that bad, the scene at the opening of the Paris Olympics, when you actually think about the historical religious context to where that scene originates from? Now, where do we get this scene from, this scene of the Last Supper? 1 Corinthians 11:23 and 24, I have received of the Lord that which also I delivered unto you, that the Lord Jesus, the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he brake it, and said, Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. Now, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the Acts, they get their material, they get their source material doctrinally or traditionally from the material coming from the Romans and the Colossians and the Corinthians, the author writing that's where they get their source material from, their source traditional material, their source doctrinal material, in which they structure a narrative around it with other source material. So if this never existed, if the author writing the First Corinthians in this scene never said this, the likelihood of that being in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is very low. So, where did the author writing this get this from? Where did the author writing this get this from? And it's important to consider where the author writing this claims they descend from. So the author writing this claims that their heritage is from Tarsus. Does Tarsus play a role in this scene? Is the author writing this giving an authentic tradition or custom? Is it unique? Does it come from anywhere? Is it associated with anyone or anything before their movement? Is it associated to anything or to anyone in their homeland? I want to keep these questions in suspense as we go through this because they absolutely do. Being from Tarsus, we're going to see, is the mainland for the religion of Mithraism. Now, who is Mithra? It's going to be brief. December 25th was Mithra's particular festival when the advent of the new light and the God's birth was celebrated. This birth was in the nature of a miracle, the young Mithras being forced out of a rock as if by some hidden magic power. He is shown naked, save for the Phrygian cap, holding dagger and torch in his uplifted hands. He is the new begetter of light, born from a rock which gives birth. And so this is how the virgin birth of Mithras comes about. He's not born from a woman, he's born from a rock. How is when this Mithras is conceived? How is he brought up by the main then God that was his God or the God? We have a quote here. Ahura Mazda, and this is coming from their scriptures, Ahura Mazda spoke to Spitana, Zarathustra, saying, Verily, when I made Mithra, the Lord of wild pastures, O Spitana, I created him as worthy of sacrifice, as worthy of prayer as myself. Ahura Mazda. The religion of Mithra, while beginning in the Persian area and developing there, eventually branched out and moved to the Roman area and became the most popular religion there until Christianity came around and took its Mithraism redid it, revamped it, and made it what it was, which is what all religions do. It's how this works. This Mithra is created as a sacrifice for salvation. A sacrifice for salvation that with blood he may, as a figurative type, die connected to that blood and cause a resurrection from what is connected to that blood. Again, what's the main focus of the author writing the Corinthians and the Romans and the Philippians and the Colossians? What's the main doctrinal focus there? In the days of Alexander the Great, Mithra's worship was as officially established in Persia as the Christian religion is today in Europe. And the king regarded himself as the King of Kings, kin to the gods, seated on the throne together with Mithras, the god, and rising with the sun. There can scarcely be any doubt about the historical connection of the Mithra's worship of ancient Persia with the Mithra's worship that began to spread over the Roman Empire at the time of Trajan. During the second century became the favorite religion of the Roman armies and soon spread through the districts on the Danube, the Rhine, Gaul, Dacia, Africa, and of course also reached Rome. Mithras resembled Christ in several most significant features. He is not Ahura Mazda, the Lord omniscient himself, but a divine person equal in dignity to him. He is the high priest of atonement through blood, a savior from eternal damnation, a leader in battle for the cause of righteousness, and a conqueror against whom the host of the fiend cannot prevail. Having fought the good fight for the salvation of mankind, Mithras ascends to heaven and prepares the millennium for his good and faithful followers. Who does this sound like to us? So when I'm asking the question, is it really that bad? Is it really that bad, the opening ceremony? What I'm really asking is plagiarism wrong? Is plagiarism wrong? Because the Christian religion through and through is plagiarism. It's plagiarism. Now, the sacred cup and the bread wafers are frequently represented upon Mithraistic medals. Let's read that again. The sacred cup and the bread wafers are frequently represented upon Mithraistic medals, and the church fathers declare that devils had imitated in the Mithraic rites the sacraments of the Lord. With all due deference to the opinion of these saintly men, we must remember that Mazdaism, with its sacramental rites, including the offering of the Homa drink and the Miazda cakes, it's older by several centuries than Christianity. That's very sweet that they want to say Mithra was simply just a copy, as the opinions that I do hear. God just allowed the illegible, the illogical, the unchosen to be established from time immemorial, so that up until the regular point, until the point in time that it should be, the authentic could then manifest. It's very sweet to say. That's not true. That's not true. The religion is what it is. All religions appear to be the same because they are. And they are appearing to be the same because religion cannot be accepted. Religion cannot be accepted and especially marketed and become popular for generations on without certain components. One of those components is religious law. You need religious law. You need religious law. When they said that we know that this man, we don't know where this man came from in the book of John, because we know where Moses came from. We know that God spoke to Moses. From whence this man came, we have no idea. Well, the language of Moses is religious law. Where there is religious law, where there is a religion that has religious law, that's to be considered authentic. because that's the language. That's the language of this realm called Earth concerning religion. The next thing is associated with those religious laws are religious traditions, ceremonies, rites, baptisms, religious theories, so on and so forth. This is how you know that a religion is a religion. So the religions build off of this centuries on. They repeat and enlarge themselves, and new facets depending on the generation. They have to do this. If not, it won't be considered a religion and it won't be considered popular enough to be devoted to the universal aspect of the solar deityship that is originally the thing concerning religion and astral worship. Considering the similarity of the Christian communion to the Miazda offerings of the Mithra's worshippers, the suggestion offers itself that the very name of the Lord's Supper among the Romans, which is Missa, or in English, Mass, the etymology of which is as yet an unsolved problem, might have been derived from the word Miazda. If Mithra's worship was so similar to Christianity, the question seems in order as to why it disappeared and left no traces. Renan goes so far as to say that if Christianity had ever been checked in its expansion, the world would now be Mithraistic. Yet as it should go, the blueprint will never change. The blueprint will stay the same. The bread and wine deity, the dying and rising bread and wine deity. That was also why they had Dionysus there in that scene at the opening of the Olympics. Dionysus, the wine deity, the one that changed the water to wine. They want, Jesus was there at the Olympic ceremony. That was Jesus, the Dionysus, the wine god. He was there. The religion does not change, but it becomes enlarged based upon the generation and the age. So Mithraism didn't really die out because we are still Mithraic to this day. Mithraism will never die. It's the blueprint of this life. It just, the name will change. Mithra will no longer be Mithra. Mithra will get a new name in every generation and every age. It's just how it goes. Another important Mithraic ceremony was the celebration of a communion service, which was in memory of the last meal which Helios and Mithra partook together upon earth. Now, again, is it really that bad what we saw? Considering the fact that the Christian theory took the same Last Supper from the religion of Mithra. What kind of parallel world are we living in where we're not going to acknowledge plagiarism at its best? In this age, we don't have the memory, but we have the history. So, in rational, logical sense, is it really that bad to see the ceremony at the Olympics doing what they're doing to the Last Supper of Christianity, when in reality, we've been seeing for more than 2,000 years the Last Supper of Christianity doing what it has been doing to the Last Supper of Mithraism? That makes no sense. Is it really that bad? Another important Mithraic ceremony was the celebration of a communion service, which was in memory of the last meal which Helios and Mithra partook together upon earth. Here the celebrant took consecrated bread and mingled it with the juice of Homa. It is quite obvious that only the initiate, who had attained the degree of lions, could take this communion. According to the Mithraic myth, Mithras was born out of a rock. In the myth, Mithras is originally separated from the sun, but later the two figures emerged. The sun was Ahura Mazda's chief representative in the battle of light against darkness, and Mithras joined this struggle only to subsequently oust the sun. Ahura Mazda created a bull, which was seized by Mithras and which subsequently escaped. Mithras caught the bull again and killed it, and life sprang out of the bull's blood. Ahriman, the power of darkness, set about to destroy the world, but Mithras prevented him from doing so. Thereby the sun acknowledged the supremacy of Mithras. Unfortunately, the bull escapes from the cave, whereupon Ahura Mazda sends a cow with a message to Mithra to find and slay it. Mithra reluctantly obeys and plunges his dagger into the bull as it returns to the cave. Strange to say, from the body of the dying bull proceeds all wholesome plants and herbs that cover the earth. From his spinal marrow, the corn, from his blood, the vine, etc. Man is now created and subjected to the malign influence of Ahriman in the form of droughts, deluges, conflagrations, but is saved by Mithra. Finally, man is well established on earth, and Mithra returns to heaven. He celebrates a last supper with Helios and his other companions, is taken in his fiery chariot across the ocean, and now in heaven protects his followers. Mithra is the mediator between God and man. This is a familiar story. And this is coming from the Catholic Encyclopedia. So now imagine if the Catholic Encyclopedia, if they would have said that the Last Supper feast between Mithras and Helios was a supper feast celebrated with bread and wine, imagine how that would have sounded. But they can't put that in there. Well, you can't put that in there because their religion has absorbed that tradition and whatever that is. What is certain is that the bull slaying was regarded as a beneficial and creative act. Out of death rose fresh life, a concept which lies at the root of all the ancient mystery religions. For all concentrate on the same question of life, death, and rebirth as observed in the annual cycle of nature. Mother Earth is entrusted with seed of corn, and soon the golden harvest is reaped. Persephone, Attis, Adonis, all perish to rise anew. Is it then possible that Mithras, and this is important, is it then possible that Mithras, personified in the bull, was thought of as killing himself only to be resurrected? This is the philosophical and the theological concept of the construct connected to Mithras in the slaying of the bull. He didn't just slay a bull and then the blood did what it did to produce life and then man also to spring from all of that. Mithras is also that same bull. He's killing himself. Philosophically, he's killing himself. He's killing himself for the purpose of regenerating the atmosphere, and in a way that is to be taken as quote-unquote salvation for what is to be on it. Despite the enemy now that is to mess with the environment and man, Mithras, by offering his own blood and the blood of that bull, ascends to become the mediator, the high priest of atonement between mankind and Ahura Mazda or the main deity there. Between Ahura Mazda and the main deity. Now this is a familiar story. This is a familiar story, and it is a familiar tradition that the author writing the Corinthians has placed into their structured narrative. It's not an accident that they have placed this structured narrative into the type of theology that they want to push out there, because at the time in which the Corinthians is being written, it is during a time period that the religion of Mithra and its cult is what it is and known. Recently, another theory of the origin of Mithraism has been set forth by David Ulansey. Ulansey theorizes that Mithraism arose in the city of Tarsus in Asia Minor. Where did it arise? In the city of Tarsus, where our beloved author of 1 Corinthians says that he comes from. He believes it was devised and propagated by a group of Stoic philosophers who thought they had discovered astronomical evidence to prove the existence of a new and powerful god. They identified this god with Perseus, one of the hero gods of Tarsus. Since the constellation of Perseus was directly above the constellation of Tarsus the bull, the philosophers believed that Perseus dominated the bull. This new religion became popular with the Cilician pirates who had close ties to the intellectual circles of Tarsus and who were interested in astral religion. They changed the name of the hero god from Perseus to Mithra in honor of Mithridates, the last of the dynasty of rulers of Pontus before Roman rule. It was this group of pirate sailors who gave Mithraism its form and spread the religion in the Roman world. Now let's get another perspective on that. The circumstances which brought the god at last to Europe after hundreds of years are indeed strange. According to the historian Plutarch, who lived in the 1st century AD, the Romans became acquainted with Mithras through pirates from Cilicia, a province of Asia Minor. These were the pirates who constituted such a threat to Rome until Pompey drove them from the seas. There are some well-known monuments associated with Mithras in the pirates' homeland in the mountainous regions of Cilicia, and recently an altar was discovered in which had been consecrated by Marcus Aurelius as priest and father of Zeus, Helios, Mithras. The god was also worshipped in Tarsus, the capital of the province, as we know from coins of the Emperor Gordian III, which bear a picture of the bull slayer. The fact that representations of the bull slayer occur on coins from Tarsus, through which Gordian III almost certainly passed on his way to battle, is evidence that Mithras was worshipped in this town in particular. Since Tarsus was situated at a road junction, it is probable that its citizens became acquainted with Mithrite cult at quite an early date. Plutarch, moreover, relates that the pirates committed outrages against the gods on Olympus, where Hephaestus was worshipped. As devotees of the Eastern god, they apparently felt little respect for the gods of the Greeks. Now, the original question that I asked, is it really that bad what occurred at the opening of the Olympic ceremony when you take into consideration the fraudulence, the theft, and the plagiarism that the Christian religion has committed against the original religion of Mithra? See, what we're seeing, right? What we're seeing, this scene of supper, this scene of a Last Supper, it is a scene concerning creation. The author writing the Corinthians placed this scene into their narrative because they understand where it comes from. They're from the area that it comes from. The religious backdrop is from the area in which this tradition comes from. To apply this to their invented deity is to suggest new creation, in the same way that the Mithraic priests putting together their invented religion wanted to signify creation. So when we are seeing the ceremony of the Olympics open with this supper scene, it's not in mockery of the Christian religion. It's not in mockery, I should say, of the Christian theory. Because the Christian theory gets their Last Supper scene from the scene between Mithra and Helios. What we're actually seeing at the opening ceremony of the Olympics is a statement traditional custom signifying a religious brand. You have to remember that although Paris or France is Catholic, or whatever they believe in concerning the Christian theory, they are also a land of reason. Which is why at the center of the same sun that is behind the head of Jesus in every picture of Jesus, the same sun was behind the center figure, because their God is going back to the French Revolution, the goddess of reason. So what we have there is a Last Supper dedicated to their religion, in the same sense as the author of the Corinthians has a Last Supper dedicated to the religion of their deity, in the same sense that the Last Supper scene in the Mithraic religion was dedicated to a Last Supper for their deity. Religions pick up on one another because that's just how they operate. That's just how they operate. That scene doesn't represent a scene of a Last Supper in reality. In real philosophical context, that scene represents the creation story that is connected to a religion. So when you have this scene placed, you're actually witnessing or representing to the creation story connected to a deity. So all that they were doing is that they were doing what Christianity has been doing. They were taking the same emphasis of a creation story, of a regeneration story, of a mediator story between God and man, and they were placing it into their belief. Christianity has been doing it. We just aren't alive in the age when the Mithraic cults were saying something against them doing this. We're not alive for that. We're alive for now. We're alive for now. And yes, there was the same outrage that the Christians are having that their theory is being somehow plagiarized. Back then, the Mithraic priests and the cult priesthoods associated to that, they had the same outrage against the plagiarism that the Christian theory was then doing. So, is it, when we think about it, right? Is it actually that bad? Or are we just witnessing what philosophically is connected to religion in the sphere that religion is? These are just things we have to think about before we offer thoughts and feelings and energy to what in reality we may not be informed about, or to what we may be tied to that isn't informed.